Greetings, this is Dr. Patrick Perot. I am preparing a video for benefit of you folks at Horizons Healthcare in Hutchinson, in part because I've been working with Lyndall Penner now for a number of years on students that you have who have visual deficits that can be aided. The test we're going to discuss today and the concept we're going to discuss is eye tracking. And eye tracking is a very key function that many children do not have, or they do not have an adequate amount of to achieve for their grades. Before I cover the practical parts of the test, I want to give you a little bit of background into how the test will be done. The test is very simple to do and takes 60 to 90 seconds, maybe 3 minutes to administer in most children. It can be graded in less than 1 minute, so it's very rapid assessment. But the key things that you'll want to know about how the assessment is done are these. First, the assessment, the test that I'm going to teach you controls for a very important function that has to be considered when you're testing a child's visual skills. And that function is, how does the child's language system send the information to the brain and how rapidly is it processed? So this test scientifically controls for the ability of the child to say a series of digits as rapidly as possible in a certain length of time. The equipment required to do the test is very simple: the test itself, a stopwatch, and a grade sheet, all of which we'll cover in just a few minutes. But to further continue on some background information, it turns out that a function called rapid automated naming has been studied extensively and is highly correlated with reading performance and comprehension. This test is going to demand a rapid automated naming skill from the child, and it will be digits only, not letters, which you would probably understand bypasses the issue with reversals of letters and things like that. So it's all numbers. Second very important piece of information you'll enjoy knowing is that the test has been studied extensively by its authors, 2 optometry colleagues, and has been found to correlate with about a 90% correlation coefficient with reading grade level of the child. So once you have a rapid automated naming assessment, which is the first 2 plates of the test, you could, with a 90% accuracy, predict the reading grade level of the child you have in front of you if you had no other information available to you. So a quick summary of what you should understand at this point. 1, rapid automated naming is key to children's performance and skill in reading. 2, if you're going to check a child's tracking skills by making them say things out loud, you must control for rapid automated naming in the process, and this test does that. And 3, you have some useful information outside of what the test would be giving you regularly, which is a reading grade level. So those are the key points to know about the background of the Developmental Eye Movement test. Okay, this is the second part of our instructional videos, and this is the actual administration of the Developmental Eye Movement test. There are 3 basic plates to the test: plate A, plate B, and then a C plate, and you'll notice that it's markedly different than the first 2. Each of these plates contains 40 digits, and that will be important as we go along to remember. The first 2 plates are, as previously mentioned, designed to do nothing but assess for rapid automated naming. These are not tracking tests. These are rapid automated naming tests. So the instructions are the child is to read the digits starting in the upper left corner as rapidly and quickly as possible. You give the child a 1, 2, 3 go signal. You have a stopwatch in your hand, or you can even use your own wristwatch. It does not have to be down to tenths of a second if you don't have that available. And then all you have to do is time time it takes for him to go through the 20 digits here, and he immediately goes without stopping to the top of the second line and does 20 more digits here. At the end of that event, test A, you stop the watch and you've got your first data point for the test. You tell the child, now you're ready to do the same thing again. This is test B, test plate B. You give him a 1, 2, 3 start point again, and you instruct him to go from the top left column to the bottom of the right column. Again, he's to do that as rapidly as possible. When you've given the test a few times, maybe a dozen times, you'll see that it's common, very common, for the kids to get very similar scores on these two tests because there's the exact same number of digits being requested, and they'll usually do those in a fairly tight time schedule. Please note, if you don't mind, and you'll be shown in the score sheet in just a minute, please note if there's any omissions or additions when the test is being administered. There's rarely a problem in that on this part of the test, but you can note that. The third plate, plate C, is actually really where the tracking event begins to be tested. And now we have 80 digits on this plate, and of course you instruct the child to read the digits just as you would read print or text on a page. Left to right, go back to the beginning of the first line and go to the next one as you're ready to go. On this test, you're apt to see quite a few omissions, additions, or errors. And so your score sheet will let you record those as they take place. So the key point, the key thought at this point is you've got test plate A, 40 digits, test plate B, 40 more digits for a total of 80 digits read. And then test plate C has 80 digits also, but they are now arranged in a horizontal array with random spacing of the digits. You're using the stopwatch on each test. You're recording the length of time it takes the child to say those numbers, and once those numbers have been recited, you're done. A couple of observations. One, many children will take their finger out and use their finger. You can do the test a couple different ways. I prefer to do it this way. I like to do the test pretty much uneditorialized. If the child takes his finger out, by the way, it's going to slow him down. So I will note that the finger is there and then watch what happens to the time. You can do an alternative method, which is you can instruct the child, please don't use your finger if you can avoid it. And that's okay too. I don't think it matters in the great scheme of things how the test is graded. So once the 3 plates have been read, the test is complete and you actually are done with the child. The beauty of this test is that it can be run on a high number of children in a very short length of time, and that includes having classroom teachers being able to run the test or nurse personnel, not just you folks at the Horizons Center. But to start with, I think it would be useful if you ran the test yourselves. So that's the end of segment 2, which is the actual physical administration of the test. The next segment I'm going to cover is grading and interpretation. Okay, the third segment I want to cover with you is interpretation of the Developmental Eye Movement Test, or DEM. And so you've now given the test, plates A, B, and C. You have your stopwatch with you, and you've made a record of the child's times on each test and their errors. And that errors include numbers that they omitted, numbers that they added in or substituted, and numbers that they skipped, I guess, is the same as the ones that were omitted. For reasons that you'll see as I show you, if a child reads, let's say there are 16 lines, I think there are 16 lines of print. If a child skips 2 lines of print, he'll read through the test faster than if he read all 16 lines. And so you have to subtract back to get the normed time under that circumstance. Okay, so this is the score sheet which comes with the test, and it obviously has all the digits that the test contains on it. This lets you have a way to rapidly make a slash through a letter or a line where an error was made. You'll notice in the lower right hand corner down here that the interpretation of the test is ready to be done. And so you'll see some adjusted time. So you'll see time in seconds. Here's errors, S errors, which is skipped, O errors, which is omitted, A errors, which is added, T errors, which is, I can't remember.
Transverse.
They turned the letter around, turned the digit around. So you just record those easily after you've made your note on the score sheet above. And obviously you do a raw time at this point. Then your adjusted time down below is going to be 80, which is the number of letters we have on the numerator, 80 plus the omitted errors, and minus the omitted errors and plus the added digits that were said. And that will control for the fact that there were letters that were too many letters that were said, too many numbers, I'm sorry, that were said, or numbers that were actually skipped. Once that's done, you get an adjusted time. And the adjusted time is what you're going to actually use to interpret the test. So let's use a quick example. So we have a child that reads through the test. It takes the child 70 seconds to read the test, but they skip 2 whole rows, and there's 5 numbers in each row. So you'd put 70 on the top. On the bottom you'd put 70 minus 10, and there were none added, so that would be a 0. So you'd get 70 over 60, and that actually means the time score is going to be 16% faster than what you read on your stopwatch. So that's a very simple illustration. And then there's a final thing to do at the bottom, which is a ratio. And the ratio is the horizontal time, adjusted time, as we just discussed, over the vertical adjusted time, which is what you had from errors interpretation on the vertical plates of the test. Once you have those two numbers, you can generate a ratio.